Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for Tuesday, March 10th, 2020. On today's episode, we're going to talk about the latest film and TV news. This is Slash Film Editor-in-Chief Peter Sciretta, and joining me on today's podcast is Slash Film Senior Writer Ben Pearson.
Hey, what's going on?
And writer Hoai-Tran.
Hey, everyone.
And Chris Evangelista.
Hello, folks.
So last night was the world premiere of Mulan. I was there. I saw the movie. HT, for the site, you went around and you got all the reactions. What are people thinking of the new Mulan movie?
Yeah, let's get down to business. People really liked Mulan. People are praising the latest Disney live-action remake as one of the best live-action remakes from the House of Mouse yet, with Angie Han, who works at Mashable and used to work at Slash Film, saying that Mulan is the best of the Disney live-action remakes since Cinderella. I don't even miss the songs. She praised its gorgeous action, heart, humor, and star Liu Yifei. And similar reactions were across the board. People praised the heart of the film, the cinematography and the battle sequences, which people said were reminiscent of wuxia epics. Wuxia is the kind of martial arts films that you would see like with Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, or Hero or House of Flying Daggers, the kind of balletic martial arts films that were very common in the early 2000s. So yeah, people praise that. Director Niki Caro's direction. The fight sequences were definitely highlighted amongst the reactions to Mulan, as well as new star Yosan An, who plays the love interest of Mulan. And apparently the romantic chemistry gets quite steamy. And while some people miss some of the elements from the animated films, like the music sequences and sidekicks, they said that the rest of the film more than made up for it.
Yeah, I was not expecting this movie to be that good. Well, first of all, let me say that I think I've only seen the animated movie Mulan once, and I think that's like around the time it came out. I think I was probably in my like too cool for school, like Disney animated movies for kids kind of like attitude at that point in my life. So I haven't like gotten to revisit it, but I don't remember loving it. I really don't have like a good memory of it. Like I don't have a good recall of the movie at all. But it's never been something like I grew up with. So I didn't have that attachment that I think some people have to like, Mushu and the musical numbers and stuff like that. So going into this, and I had heard from test screenings that there was some mixed reviews from test screenings. So going into this, I was expecting not to love this movie, and I was shocked at how much I liked. This is so majestic. The action is thrilling. It like does this interesting thing where like the camera's kind of like rotating on its side, choreographed to the action. It's hard to describe, and it's something you definitely have to see. I think this movie, I'm just surprised. This movie aims for like a level of sophistication, care with, culture and beauty that I just don't expect from like these Disney live action adaptations. And I guess that just brings me down to like, I'm not sure who this movie is for, because I don't think this movie is for kids. It's PG-13. I think people that grew up with the animated movie might have some like whiplash, because this is like just so different. But Ben, you also saw this movie. I'm wondering what you thought.
I did, and I liked it a lot. I actually revisited the animated movie I think I've probably only seen that animated version maybe like 2 or 3 times or something total in my life. It was definitely not in my rotation when I was a kid, but it's on Disney Plus right now, so I rewatched it knowing that I was going to be watching this screening. And I like the live action version a lot more. I know that is probably sacrilege for some people who, hold the animated version near and dear to their hearts, but I think it does a lot better with the story. And I think that, Peter, you're talking about like the differences between the live action and animated version. Even though this movie is not perfect, I would much, much, much rather Disney be making movies like this, where there are considerable differences between the movies that came before, than just doing the shot for shot kind of stuff that we've seen before, because these choices are always more interesting to me. I echo a lot of your thoughts. I think the fight choreography is really great. I saw it on Saturday at the Directors Guild of America in LA, and Nikki Caro and the star of the movie were there, and they did a Q&A, and I wrote up so I wrote an article about that and transcribed a lot of their quotes. So maybe we can link to that in the show notes if people are interested in more of like how this movie came together. But Nikki Caro was talking about like how Game of Thrones basically changed the game for how to shoot big battles. And so she had to sort of get creative under the Disney brand of not being able to show blood and gore and all that, the kind of stuff that would actually be on a real battlefield. So she, decided to use a geothermal valley as some of the settings and stuff. And that way she was able to use some of the smoke and steam to sort of obscure some of the violence and make it cinematic that way. So I love the look of the movie. I thought the star, how do you pronounce her name again? I'm sorry. Liu Yifei?
Liu Yifei.
Yifei. Okay. I thought she was really great. I mean, that's one of the things that the live action Disney movies have done very well. I guess Lion King aside, because everyone in that in the leads of that movie were a little boring. But the live action people, like I loved the lead of Aladdin, Mina Moussaoud. I thought he was great. And yeah, this Mulan actress is fantastic too. So I came away very, very surprised with how much I enjoyed it. It's not gonna light the world on fire, but in terms of like who it's for, I think it's for anybody who just likes this story and wants to see a different version of it. I think the wuxia elements were really surprising to me because I hadn't really paid much attention to the marketing. So that was kind of cool. Anybody who likes, like battle scenes, fight sequences, stuff like that, in a relatively family friendly context, I think a lot of people will find a lot to like about Mulan.
I mean, I just think that it's weird because I feel like Mulan, skews young, and this movie is for it almost feels like a $200 million art house film. I mean, it is a little bit Disney and, corny at times. And, I'm not saying it's, on that level, but it is just strange. And I'm wondering, who's going to find this movie? I mean, this movie was made for HD, I guess, is the answer. Right?
Yeah, maybe it is made for people who grew up on the animated one and want to, just take their families now to go see.
My family, my children.
Well, when I went to the premiere last night and we were driving into the Hollywood and Highland Center because this was held at the Dolby Theater, there was bomb-sniffing dogs, and there was also one of those guys that comes underneath your automobile with a mirror looking for bombs and stuff. And I've never encountered this. After going to premieres in Hollywood for the last 10 years, even the biggest of premieres, big star, Avengers Endgame, where there's all the movie stars in the world are at this one location. I've never seen this happen. And I at first didn't know why this was happening, but after writing my review reaction on Twitter, I saw a ton of tweets at me, angry tweets saying that nobody should see this movie, hashtag boycott Mulan. So HT, why don't you tell me what is going on here?
All right, well, I'm going to try to condense a sort of complicated political situation into so many words, but boycott Mulan stems from comments that star Liu Yifei made in August 2019 when she, on the Chinese social media app Weibo, said, "I support the Hong Kong police. You can all attack me now. What a shame for Hong Kong." And she said this in response to protests that have been ongoing and are still ongoing, actually, in Hong Kong over an amendment, a bill that would basically allow for the Hong Kong government to extradite criminals from territories that the Hong Kong government doesn't have jurisdiction over, including mainland China. And this kind of all goes back to the tension between the Hong Kong government and the Chinese mainland government, which is I'm sorry. I'm the Chinese Central People's Government. To kind of sum it up, the Central People's Government now has jurisdiction over Hong Kong after years of Hong Kong being sort of a independent sovereignty. It was inherited from British Hong Kong and kind of remained independent of mainland China for a long time. But recently, the Central People's Government now has essentially taken over and are starting to exert more influence and power over Hong Kong. And the residents of Hong Kong are not happy about that. They have been protesting since early 2019, and those protests have escalated with Hong Kong police essentially using police brutality and violence against the protesters. Protesters have also used some violent methods as well, throwing petrol bombs and vigilante attacks. So, but it is very much an issue of just kind of this political tension going on in China and Hong Kong at the moment. And Liu Yifei, who has long worked in the Chinese movie industry, she was actually called, I think, one of the actresses of the new wave of Chinese cinema at the moment. And she basically put her support out for the central people's government and the Hong Kong government, and people are protesting and suggesting to boycott Mulan because of her comments. So it is to say that she and a lot of other Chinese actors have thrown their support in with the Chinese government, despite the government's often tyrannical. Is tyrannical the right word? I'm sorry to this is something that I'm trying to say.
It's a very complex
because it's
situation.
a very complex thing. Yes. So she, even Donnie Yen has been known to be pro Beijing as well. So because of the very the Chinese cast that come in, most of the cast of Mulan are from mainland China versus some of the other actors like Yosanan comes from Australia, a few of them, but majority of them come from mainland China because of their stance on the Hong Kong protests, their support of the Chinese mainland government, a lot of people who are in support of the Hong Kong protesters and their fight for more privacy and freedom, essentially, are calling for a boycott of Mulan.
Okay, future Peter here. I'm breaking in because we got a little bit of this whole China situation a little bit wrong. HD is here to clear things up. HD, tell us what is going on.
I unfortunately am not a historian, and I got some of the details wrong. I want to say that Hong Kong has been under Chinese sovereignty since 1997, and they're under a high degree of autonomy until 2047. But the bill that basically became the spark of the Hong Kong protests kind of blurred that line between how much jurisdiction the Chinese mainland government had over Hong Kong. And the big fear around this bill is that Hong Kong residents who enjoyed that sort of freedom as a sort of autonomous government would be, under the mainland, would be less empowered under the mainland government and would essentially be whisked away to be tried under the mainland government's system versus being protected by the Hong Kong government. So this is something that was a big fear from the protesters who saw that as their freedom as Hong Kong residents being infringed upon.
Okay, I think that clears things up quite a bit. I'm going to splice in now the rest of the podcast. I guess the big question after all that, HJ, the big question is should we be boycotting Mulan? Should we care? My first reaction was, because I was getting my reaction, my Twitter thread was just completely hijacked by this boycott Mulan stuff in a very aggressive way that it left a bad taste in my mouth. That it wasn't peaceful, it was very angry. And it sounds like there's a lot behind this, a lot fueling this. So it's not I don't want to oversimplify things, but it left me with a very bad taste in my mouth that I'm all for people protesting, but should we be protesting? Should we not be seeing this movie? What should we be doing?
It's a complicated situation, as I was saying, and it's really up to you. This is a film made by Disney and not by Chinese studios, so it won't be going to the Chinese government in any means. But going back to what you were saying before about who this audience was made for, when I visited the set of Mulan, and speaking to the producers, especially producer Jason Reed, and they spoke about trying to appeal much more to the Chinese audience. This movie is made very much for that Chinese audience, and almost explicitly made for sort of to circumvent any potential problems with the Chinese government censors. The Chinese movie market is known to be especially strict when it comes to progressive issues like LGBT representation, anything that really goes against the government. So it's complicated, and like, and
it's also one person saying this one thing, and this movie was made by thousands of people. Mm-hmm. Like, should they all be punished, even if you believe in this issue?
For sure. And I wondered, this was actually something I was speaking to Ben about before. I haven't seen Mulan yet. I don't know if this is an element that will be appearing throughout Mulan, but in a lot of Chinese-made films, even popular films like Ip Man, they're very sort of pro-China imperialist elements that are seeded throughout these films. A lot of them have pretty overtly propagandist messages. And we still enjoy these films too, and we watch them with that sort of knowledge that these are made by and for Chinese governments that isn't so kind to its citizens. But I wondered, as I was going through my set visit report and looking at the way that Disney almost seemed to be tiptoeing around the representation of China and Chinese culture in this, I wondered if some of these almost imperialist propagandist elements would be making their way into Mulan. And Ben, why don't you speak about this?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really, and Peter, let me know if you saw anything, but I didn't. I tried to watch it with those concerns in mind a little bit, because I was just curious, because of what she said, like a lot of movies that are, I guess, friendly to China, you could say, have that pro-China message. And I knew about this controversy beforehand, so I was just curious about that. But I'm not like an expert on the geopolitical situation in China and all that. But I didn't really see anything that was overtly, pro-China in a way that went beyond the bounds of just the classic Mulan story of like doing the duty to your country and like serving the army because you're called upon to do that. But Peter, did you notice anything that was particularly egregious or stood out to you as being like a moment that sort of made you raise your eyebrows that seemed like a pro-China kind of thing?
No, I didn't. And I usually do, like with what was that big movie last year, HT, that was like
Wandering Earth?
Wandering Earth, like, it was all over that. It was like...
Yeah, for sure. They're like, China and Russia's friendship will save the world.
Yeah, it was hard not to see it in that. So I don't know. I didn't see it in this. But
I do want to say what Ben said about the emphasis on the elements of doing your duty to save your country, doing your duty to your country, is in line with the original Confucian lessons from the original Ballad of Mulan, which the movie takes a lot of inspiration from. I wrote about this in my Asian diaspora piece for Mulan. You can link it in the show notes. And it definitely feels more like that's part of what they're doing to appeal more to the Chinese audience, because it's about duty, it's about those Confucian themes, versus being just about, the feminist, empowering feminist story that you have in the original animated film.
Yeah. Okay, we've talked enough about Mulan today. Let's move on. Let's talk about Paramount. They are launching a new banner for Blu-ray movies where everybody else is going streaming. They're putting their money in physical releases. Chris, what is going on here?
Yeah, I'm actually thrilled about this because, like you said, a lot of studios would love to just kill off their physical media entirely, and Paramount is taking the complete opposite approach with this new label called Paramount Selects, where they're giving movies, from their library special Blu-ray releases. It's the first one's come out April 21st, and it's going to be Fatal Attraction, King Creole, which is an Elvis Presley movie, and To Catch a Thief from Alfred Hitchcock. And what I'm excited about this for is because they mentioned in the press release, and I wrote this up too, that the plan is to be, to start releasing films that never got a Blu-ray release. Like I really hope personally, I hope they do Martin Scorsese's Bringing Out the Dead, which is a Paramount movie that has only been released on DVD for some reason. And I would love like a special Blu-ray for that. So, again, if you're not into physical media, none of this will probably appeal to you. But if you like collecting Blu-rays as I do, this is cool news. It's another sort of boutique thing to look forward to.
Yeah, and I had previously heard about this, and it was kind of pitched to me as like Paramount's version of the Criterion Collection, where they're gonna honor not only release these films, but honor them with some very powerful special features and give it the not just the remaster they deserve, but also some accompanying extras and stuff like that. So that's exciting, because even if you aren't into physical media, those extras are probably going to eventually trickle their way down to streaming in some way. So not that Paramount has a streaming service, but
not yet. Give them time.
Yeah. One thing we were talking about yesterday is the coronavirus. I'm actually surprised they didn't delay Mulan because of, that having, a big Chinese audience. We have some new updates today. There are some movies delayed. There's some changes with game shows. HT, tell us about it.
Yeah, well, recently the Centers for Disease Control issued an advisory that the elderly avoid crowds and stay home as much as possible in case of an outbreak of their communities. And that seems that advisory, in addition to just the escalating nature of the coronavirus epidemic, is starting to take a hit on theater and movie releases as well as TV. So essentially, Peter Rabbit 2: The Runaway is the latest film to be pushed back because of coronavirus concerns. It has been pushed back to the summer. The film was initially due to launch March 19th in Australia, March 26th in Germany, Portugal and Ukraine, and March 27th in the UK, followed by a wide international release in April and US bow in April 3rd. But because the first Peter Rabbit was had such a big box office success internationally with best performance in France, Germany, and Japan, Sony is essentially deciding to push it back to give those markets a chance to come back. Asian European markets right now are recording historically low box office weekends, so they're not taking a chance with the sequel. And a new Hollywood Reporter report says that studios are bracing right now for a downturn in moviegoing in the weeks ahead, in the aftermath of the CDC recommendation for the elderly. So this is something that we'll probably be seeing in the next few weeks, with just like lower box office numbers and potentially more movie delays. A big one, of course, being No Time to Die, and now there's just a ripple effect throughout. And of course, it's happening in TV too, which is kind of an unexpected thing. But according to Deadline, game shows like Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune, which have audiences that are generally older and from out of town and shoot in studio, will begin taping episodes without studio audiences now for the foreseeable future. And Jeopardy host Alex Trebek will continue his duties for now, while he's still battling stage 4 pancreatic cancer. So it's possibly to help his to protect his health as well. So, another thing that's happening is that the Broadway theater attendance will probably be taking a significant toll. In response to that, producer Scott Rudin is cutting down ticket prices to $50 through March to help keep theaters full. His shows like To Kill a Mockingbird, West Side Story, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, The Book of Mormon are typically sold out and played in near full houses. But he's anticipating that those full houses will be seeing a lot of cancellations in the coming weeks. And so he is trying to get butts in the seats with smaller prices. But one that hasn't really been affected by coronavirus so far is the Cannes Film Festival, which is still on for the time being. But there is an interesting new Variety report that revealed that the festival won't be able to rely on an insurance claim in the case of cancellation. And it's kind of strange since the insurance company for the festival had offered to give them a buyback option covering epidemics and pandemics around 10 days ago, but Cannes declined. So now if they get canceled, and if they're forced to shutter because of the government, then they won't be able to get any money from that. So which will be interesting to see how they'll play out, because right now the French government has made a recent ban on gatherings of more than 1,000 people, and with Cannes coming in late May, that ban might still be in place.
Is it irresponsible for a producer to like lower the ticket prices to get more people to gather together in like a small room to watch a play in these times?
Probably. But the show must go on,
yeah,
as they say.
I'm supposed to see Hamilton here in Los Angeles on Saturday night, and I've been like keeping my fingers crossed that they aren't going to cancel the show. So, selfishly, I'm just like, I'm not sick, and hopefully it won't be too bad. So I don't know.
I've been seeing some ads for cruises on my just come up, and one of them I clicked on because I was like, this can't be right. And there was like a cruise out of Florida to Mexico or somewhere. It was like a 7-day cruise, and it was like $200 per person. And it was like, we are adding in free open alcohol bar. We're adding free Wi-Fi. Like, it was like a list of things that usually you have to pay extra for. And it was like the price of the cruise is already like heavily discounted. It was insane. So I wonder how many people are going to be, have no fear and take advantage of these deals.
The question is, who willingly goes on cruises?
Cruises, you know what? I never wanted to go on a cruise until I went on a Disney cruise because I wanted to see what it was like. And it is actually a lot more fun. It's hard to describe because I'm not one of those people that likes like lounging around and like swimming in pool. Like, I'm not when I go on vacation, I want to do stuff. But there's a lot to do on a cruise. I don't know. Okay, I don't know. But it might be a bad idea to do a cruise during these times.
Yes, we are not experts by any means on the coronavirus, but just everyone wash their hands and use hand sanitizer. Be safe out there.
I will say this: cruise ships already are like very cautious in terms of like illnesses and stuff. Like, when you go to a restaurant on a cruise ship, outside the restaurant, they have these like basically hand washing machines that everybody before they go into the restaurant have to wash their hands. So like it's already like kind of a big thing because you have a lot of people on one boat. What is it? Ship? I got yelled at once for calling it the one that it's not supposed to be called. I think it's a boat. I don't know. Whatever. Either way, apparently there's a difference and people get mad when you call it the wrong thing.
Everyone emails
don't
to correct us.
No. Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about Halloween Horror Nights. This is an annual gathering at Universal Studios in both Florida and Hollywood. And actually, I think they even do it overseas in Japan. And this is like one of these haunted events where they create mazes based on movie properties, and it's a lot of fun. It originally, I think, was like only a couple weeks. Now, I think Halloween Horror Nights in Florida starts at like the beginning of September or something insane like that. And now, apparently, there's been discussions that Blumhouse might be making a Halloween Horror Nights movie. Chris, what do we know?
Right. So nothing's official yet, but the Halloween Horror Nights have had several Blumhouse themed mazes or attractions or whatever they have there. I've never been there, so I don't entirely know what they have. I'm guessing it involves people jumping out at you wearing masks.
Yeah,
like every other.
It's these elaborate sets. So you walk through like a movie, like they've had like Happy Death Day, or I think last year they had a Blumhouse. It was just like Blumhouse house, and then you'd go through like every room would be like a different movie from Blumhouse that you would be transported into that world, into a scene from the movie, and you'd get scared.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that sounds neat. And because, Blumhouse has this relationship with Universal, during an interview, Jason Blum mentioned that there actually has been conversations about a potential Halloween Horror Nights movie. He didn't really give any more details, but one could assume it would involve, characters attending Halloween Horror Nights, and then the horror becomes real. And they've made several movies like this before. There are actually like two movies recently. Both had like Fest in the title. One was like Blood Fest, and the other was like
Hellfest,
and they had like the same exact plot where rambunctious youngsters go to a theme park and they get chased by real killers. So I'm assuming that's what they would do with this, but the one difference here would be that they would be able to use, familiar characters. They would actually be able to use like Michael Myers or characters from the Blumhouse movies in this movie because, Universal owns those rights. And that might be, an interesting twist depending on what plot they get out of that.
I will say this as a huge fan of Halloween Horror Nights, the events they do. I can't imagine that Universal Studios, that makes a lot of money off of people buying ticket prices to go to these events, would do a movie about killers on the, having a killing spree at these events, because wouldn't that scare people off? But
no, that's what they want. People want to be chased by real killers, Peter. That's what we're all going for here.
See, I do like what you're getting at, Chris, that there's an idea here to kind of mash up a bunch of Universal properties that in any other light would have no business, coming together into one movie. And there could be something fun there. And I'm also wondering, like, maybe it takes the approach that, I guess I haven't seen these movies. Did you see Hellfest? And
yes, I've seen both of those films.
I'm guessing those movies were just like actual killers in these, during a night at one of these events, right?
Yeah, it was basically literally that. It was just like, there's a real killer in the amusement park. And
So what if this was like a different approach where like the monsters from these movies somehow come alive out of the mazes, or maybe the mazes transport the people into these worlds or something like that? So
like Jumanji is what you're saying? I could watch that. I'd be on for that.
I don't know. I'm excited for this. I'd like to see it. If you've never been to Halloween Horror Nights, I highly recommend it. Chris, you got to make the journey one of these days.
I do. One day, I would like to actually go to at some point. One day.
Yeah, you'd love it. Okay. We've also been talking a lot recently about Quibi. Now we found out how the advertising is going to be working on this new streaming service. Ben, tell us about Quibertizing.
Boo. They do not call it that, by the way, although I wouldn't put it past them for a company that calls themselves Quibi. But
they should, Ben. They should.
Yeah, I think you're right. So there are going to be two tiers for Quibi customers. There is an ad-supported subscription that costs $4.99 a month, and then there's an ad-free version that costs $7.99 a month. So if you pony up for that ad-free version, then almost none of what I am about to say is going to apply to you. So if you pay $8 a month, you'll be able to skip all the ads, basically just like Hulu. But like Hulu, there is this ad-supported version that's a little bit cheaper. So if you decide to subscribe to Quibi and pay that, then here's what's going to happen. There's going to be unskippable pre-roll ads before every single one of its TV shows and movies, or whatever you want to call the Quibi content, basically. The company has already sold $150 million worth of advertising for its first year, and they have locked its ad partnerships down to just 10 companies that are going to be promoting multiple brands with that those companies own over the first year. There will not be any political ads during its first year, so thank God for that. And basically, each of these pre-roll ads can be either 6 seconds, 10 seconds, or 15 seconds long. There will be no mid-roll ads, so that's a plus. Nothing's going to interrupt your programming once you finally get into it.
Nothing's going to interrupt my 5-minute program.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And then like overall, Quibi is going to run 2.5 minutes of ads for every hour of programming. So, if you basically that breaks down to, if you decide to watch a full hour of Quibi stuff, like 12 5-minute chunks of a show in a row, you're going to get 12 unskippable ads, which could be anywhere from 6 to 15 seconds long. So that's the long and short of it.
That's not too bad. Like I feel,
yeah, not terrible. And also like the whole turnstile technology that Quibi has, where you can turn your phone, from horizontal to vertical and seamlessly transition. That is going to apply to the ads too. So man, I can't wait to see what the hashtag brands come up with for, creative ways to get people to turn their phones sideways when they're trying to buy toilet paper or whatever the hell.
Wait, have they actually coined the term turnstile technology?
Yeah, that's what they call it.
Damn it, they should have went with a Quibi pun of some kind. Okay, our last story for today is about Thor: Love and Thunder. We have found out that the Guardians of the Galaxy might be in this movie, which I don't think is that surprising, but Chris, tell us about it.
Right. So this news comes from Vin Diesel, which you should always take with a grain of salt because he's in his own different world. It's his world and we're all just living in it. But during an interview for Bloodshot, his new movie, which looks awful, Vin Diesel casually mentioned that Thor will, quote, incorporate some of the Guardians of the Galaxy. And like you said, Peter, this isn't the most shocking thing. The end of Avengers Endgame has, Thor with the Guardians and, they're about to go off to space together. And Chris Hemsworth has had a surprisingly great chemistry with that cast when he was with them in the Avengers films. I think at the time, maybe they were sort of planning it to have the Guardian have Thor in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, but then of course the James Gunn situation happened, that movie got pushed, and now we're going to be seeing Thor before that. So maybe they're sort of swapping it out to take care of that. And so we don't really know how big their part is going to be in this new movie, or how many of them are going to be in it. But that's the news according to Vin Diesel.
Yeah, as I said, I think we pretty much expected this. Okay, that does it for today's Slash Film Daily. You can find more of all of our work at slashfilm.com. You can find this podcast published every weekday on iTunes, Google, Overcast, Spotify, all the popular podcast apps. Please feel free to send your feedback, questions, comments, concerns to us at peter@slashfilm.com. And rate and review this podcast on iTunes. Tell your friends. Spread the word. And we will see you tomorrow.